Live from the Talking Joe Studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. Now, today we will be talking to Alex Antone. Do we pronounce his name like that? We will find out in just a second. He is the Editorial Director of Skybound and editor of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. We are recording this just ahead of Silent Missions month, with 6 ARAH books coming out just in a matter of weeks. So it's G.I. Joe a go-go. And talking to Alex with me, if that is a sentence that works, it's my regular co-host, it's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and let's bring in our guest right now.
Hello, Alex.
Hello. So first of all, it's Antone, and that's the main reason I am here, to officially correct the pronunciation of my name. Even Andrew Cronky didn't know how to pronounce my last name, which was a real disappointment. So.
But you guys haven't met in person, right? So isn't that forgivable?
No, unforgivable. Never. No, we did talk on the phone once, but I probably didn't say my last name.
I'm gonna try it out. Alex Antone.
Antone, like phone.
Okay.
I don't know.
Bone, Antone, give a dog a bone.
Yeah.
All of that.
The origin is actually Italian. It's Antonacci originally, and it was changed to Antone, I guess, by my grandfather to sound more generic. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why, other than maybe it wasn't popular to be Italian at that point in time. But yeah, Antone. Thank you for letting me set the record straight.
When my great-grandfather came through Ellis Island, he did not shorten his name. And I'll just leave the rest of that as a mystery. Mark, let's ask Alex our usual first question.
Get rid of one of the ends off of Tim Finn. It's all right, Tim. You don't have to correct me.
This is not where that name comes from. This is a name that disappeared through marriage. Alex, what is this? Listeners, I will reveal this in a future episode. Alex, what is your experience with G.I. Joe as a youth?
None. None whatsoever.
Wow.
I was not a G.I. Joe fan. I wasn't against G.I. Joe, but I was, I would say, slightly too young at that point in time to be exposed to it. I don't think it. I was born in '85, so I started watching cartoons in probably like '89 or '90, and like that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was my thing. But if I'd been born 5 years earlier, I'm sure I would have been all about G.I. Joe. And yes, Ninja Turtles graduated into Power Rangers, and then I kind of aged out of that kind of television. But yeah, I was, and I've been very public about this in all my interviews about G.I. Joe, that I was not a G.I. Joe fan really before I started working on this book.
This is not a litmus test, and our expressions of shock are merely shock and not disappointment.
Great.
And I guess discovering it a bit more professionally as an adult rather than with all of that great big baggage of nostalgia that we have. How's that experience been?
Great. I mean, honestly, it's been fun to discover something new, and then dive in real deep. It's like anything. Like when I got into professional wrestling as a fan, like very late. I had just had our first child, and I needed something to do while I was just sitting there on the couch with an infant. And so I watched every single Royal Rumble. And then I got in real deep. And then more recently, I've gotten really into Formula One, and I'm just like super into Formula One and getting in real deep there. So it's been fun. It's been fun to find new things at a later stage in life and then dive in real deep. And G.I. Joe has also definitely been one of those things professionally. And then I'd actually worked with Larry before. Mm-hmm. I think that was the reason that I was assigned this book, was that like I already had a relationship with Larry. I worked with him on Deathstroke at DC, but really with Larry, I was working with Christopher Priest, who's amazing, and on Deathstroke, and we ran a Deathstroke book for 50 issues, which was pretty sweet. But yeah, it was at a time when our artist on the book, Carlo Pagulayan, was just having trouble hitting deadlines. And so we were like, how can we help him? And Priest was the one that suggested, what if we just brought in Larry Hama to do layouts for everything? And I was like, would he do that? Is he busy? It's not going to pay him a lot. And apparently he wanted to do it. And maybe it was a favor to his old friend, Priest. So that was where I first worked with him. And then, he'd worked with Marie Javins at DC, who's editor-in-chief now, but they had worked together, I think, at Marvel back in the day. So I was friendly enough with enough people that were friendly with Larry that I think we got off on a good foot. And then, and Larry was always wonderful to work with. So even when he wasn't writing G.I. Joe.
Those issues of Deathstroke, I have that whole series and I love it. And as much as I'm glad that there's that complete omnibus, it's so heavy and I can't wait for a softcover.
It's a big boy for sure. I know they should reprint that on the same paper that we printed the G.I. Joe compendiums. They're much lighter. The softcover compendiums are pretty sweet.
Agreed. Hama was not credited with layouts for many, many issues in a row. It seemed like sometimes he got the credit and sometimes he didn't. But when I talked to him, it seemed like he did a solid run of issues. Do you recall that credit not getting printed sometimes?
No, because I think it was Well, if it wasn't printed on issues where he did layouts for Carlo specifically, then that would have been a mistake. But he only did layouts for Carlo. But there were also other artists on that book.
Okay.
So that may have been where the inconsistency came from. Because Carlo is wonderful, but just very, very slow. So we did what we could do.
Planet Hulk fan too here.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. And then went on to have at least one other book with Priest in the Superman book that they did together, which was amazing.
Oh, so. Superman Lost? Yeah. Yes, that's face out at my store right now.
Great. I don't know how we got off on this Deathstroke thing, but we can get back to
if I can't talk about Spider or Paperboy, I want to talk about some other DC book for 45.
There we go.
But as a big fan of Hama's work as a penciler or layout artist, what some of my very favorite issues of G.I. Joe from Marvel are the issues that Hama worked on as doing layouts or sort of breakdowns, as he might call them. I think he's just got this incredible, innate storytelling ability, which, given this month we're celebrating issue 21 in a big way, I don't think I need to tell you his abilities on the page.
Yeah, it's a good segue. He actually he calls himself. We were doing the Larry Hama trading card for the G.I. Joe Kickstarter. We were writing up his bio, and he said he didn't want to be referred to as a writer. He wanted to be referred to as a penciler with a word processor, which I thought was very funny. So that is what he's referred to as on this trading card. I don't think he thinks of himself as a writer, which is kind of hilarious because he has written many, many comics. So, yeah.
Can you talk about starting up this new run on A Real American Hero? There's a year between the final issue at the previous publisher. The book looks a little different, looks very different. The book feels a little different, even though it's still the same title and numbering and writer and storyline. Can you talk about initially talking with Hama and how you might make your stamp on it or what you wanted out of him on this book?
Yeah. Well, I think the number one thing was we wanted to give Larry an outlet to continue writing this comic. I think that was our number one goal, was just to continue. Because I think we as an industry, we as a company, we as the publishers of G.I. Joe owe a lot to Larry. And we want Larry to be able to write this comic for as long as he wants to write it. So that was goal number one. Goal number two on my end was make this comic look as good as it can possibly look. And that was where Chris Mooneyham came in. That was where Paul Pelletier came in. That was where Andy Kubert on covers came in. Andy I've worked with for a long time, also dating back to DC. And he was actually Robert's suggestion initially. And I was like, boy, Andy's very expensive. Are you sure? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, okay. And obviously the covers have all turned out incredible. He's one of the best of all time. And I think we actually hired Andy first before we hired anybody else. So I was, going, okay, well, who makes sense in an Andy Kubert? I didn't want the interiors of the comic to look vastly different. Well, obviously, Andy was not going to draw the book, but then Chris Mooneyham became kind of the obvious choice as a Joe Kubert person, and certainly I think would even say he owes a lot to the Kubert school, and Joe and Andy, and was actually a student of Andy at one point. So that made logical sense. Although I credit Riley Rossmo with the idea, because I was talking to Riley just about G.I. Joe in general, and he was like, you should hire Chris Mooneyham, and I was like, well, yeah, he would be spectacular. Good call.
Did you work with Mooneyham at DC? I was just looking the other day at this incredible Unknown Soldier short story that he did for one of the I think it was a DC first and then collected as an anthology.
That was what sold me on him for sure, was that piece specifically. If it's the same stuff that we're talking about. But no, I never worked with him at DC. He was working on Nightwing for a little bit while I was at DC, but I wasn't the editor of Nightwing at that point. So, but I was aware of him, thought he was good, and thankfully he was available. So, yeah, that was our goal was not to reinvent the book. Our goal was to just make it really good, and we're doing our best to do that month after month.
Francisco Segala has such a wonderful take on colors, where each location has its own palette, so it's really clear when we cut from one place to another that we're in a different place, and also not over rendering, not making things overly shiny, using sort of retro textures with like faux dot screens as a digital tool. Can you talk about finding him and putting him on this book?
Sure. I think we really liked his work on Something is Killing the Children. I think that was kind of the first thing that I saw that I was like, this guy's really good. And then in talking with him, it was very clear he was game for a long-term assignment, this would be that. I think he likes Something is Killing Children. I think he likes, as with anybody in comics, you want a thing that you can count on, there's so many miniseries. There's so many series that start and then get canceled. This comic has no danger of getting canceled anytime soon. So it's lasted this long. And I should say, to Robert's credit, even though I was like, man, Andy Kubert's really expensive. We're selling more copies of Real American Hero than I think have been sold in a very long time. So yeah, I just thought Segala was good, and then once I saw him on Mooneyham, I was like, yeah, this is a good match. And then I wanted to make sure that, knowing that there was going to be artist switches, that we kept him consistent, and that's again something that I learned back at DC, doing Deathstroke as a twice a month book. There's no way to have an artist draw 2 books a month, so keeping the colors consistent, I found, is nice from a reader standpoint, to just feel like, okay, I know the art style is different, but I don't feel like this is an entirely different book. It feels like it's the same world. The characters are roughly the same tones. I don't feel like I'm too disoriented. So
while we're talking about the Andy Kubert on the covers, it must be interesting for him having, returning to G.I. Joe after such a long time away, and it being, him creating one of those iconic covers in the past. I discovered the other day actually as well that I think Hama gave him his first professional work as a pin-up in the back of Conan or some such. But what's it like working with him? How do you kind of land on the cover ideas? In the back of one of the books, you shared a rough layout from Hama for 301. Is he still doing that, or is it more of a conversation about what potentially the image might be?
We started with that, and one of the reasons why Andy was eager to take the gig was specifically to work with Larry again. I think he really feels like, not that he owes a lot to Larry, but he certainly does. But I think he just has very fond memories of working on G.I. Joe. I think he had only done covers back in the day, which I'd love to change that at some point. but we'll see. Maybe
That sounds expensive too.
It does sound very expensive, doesn't it? We'd have to sell a lot of copies.
That issue can just have $1 cover price higher, and I bet no one will bat an eye.
There we go. Yeah, so it started off with, okay, because I knew Larry does, layouts sometimes. And it started off with me saying, do you want to do the cover layouts? And I think he did a cover layout for 302, which was the funeral issue, I think, right? Mm-hmm. So he did that layout. Maybe he did a 301 layout too, but then we just changed a lot of it. And it ended up coming to the point of, okay, we don't really need you to do layouts for these. Like, Andy's obviously great at doing covers, but I definitely still go to him sometimes for cover ideas. I typically will just read the script and go, okay, what haven't we done in a while? What's a moment from this issue that we feel like we can, blow up into a cover? And that's how we approach it. I was very used to extrapolating even from like outlines to be like, okay, if I don't have a full script yet, all right, here's the cover idea for this. And usually it's just between me and Andy, but I'll go to Larry and say, what do you think about this? And he'll be like, yeah, that sounds good, or it should be this. But yeah, once in a while, like in issue 317, I think Dr. Mindbender gets a new look that's out there now. So Larry did a new design for Dr. Mindbender, and we incorporated that into the cover. So yeah, it's definitely a collaboration, but Andy is, again, literally one of the best to ever do it. So mostly it's just me being like, I don't know, what do you think about Storm Shadow fighting a bunch of Cobra Troopers? And he's like, that sounds good to me. And then he makes it look awesome. So there we are.
When you took over this story, was there a sense that there could be more action, that this could be aged up a little bit from the previous run at a previous publisher?
I think it just happened. I don't really think there was a conscious effort to make it more mature, but I have noticed a slight shift. The book is still like T rated, so it's not like it's too crazy. But yeah, I do think there's something about Skybound and Image Comics that makes people want to push things a little farther. And that says more about us than anything else. But yeah, no, I think we just wanted to make it a book that, and that's the approach that I always take with almost anything that I do is like, what would be the version of the book that I want to read? And, the tone that we've struck with Mooneyham and with Paul and with Andy and Larry, like that's just kind of what we felt like this book needed to be. So yeah, it definitely there wasn't a conscious effort to be like, let's make it crazier. It was just, let's make it better,
Yeah, there was a bit of a sense from some people of like, hold on, this is Skybound, and you're starting this new story with a bunch of zombies. Is that a coincidence? Is that intentional? Is that a bit of an
that was a
inside
plot
joke?
thread that we just picked up from the previous run.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with Skybound. So.
You did launch with 301, so it's give or take the 301st issue of a long-running saga. Was there any sense of nervousness about how that 301st issue could be accessible to a new set of readers or returning readers?
That was definitely something that I was concerned with, especially when I got the script from Larry and it was like the next issue. And I was like, okay, what do we do here? So yeah, that was where those first 2 pages came in, where it's like, I was like,
right.
Have Chris just explain what G.I. Joe is. Well, Larry wrote that. I said, Larry, can you just do like a 2-page primer on like, if you've never read a G.I. Joe comic before, here's what G.I. Joe is all about. And I tried to make it as super high level as possible so that, it truly, if you didn't even know what the concept of G.I. Joe was, that you'd be able to come in and hopefully pick it up as you go. Obviously I did the work that every editor should do and make sure every character is named, make sure that, as much as possible, we get a sense of who these characters are when we first see them. And like we also added the character profiles, I think, in the back of that first issue, which I was like, this is good too. I just want to make sure that someone who's riding the wave of excitement around Skybound taking over G.I. Joe and Transformers, like can just pick up this book, because hopefully there's some belief that if Skybound is publishing it, it's a good comic, and then hopefully we deliver something that they are into. So yeah, that was the idea.
Here's my vote after those Pat Olaf heads at the back of issue 301 and that one variant cover for issue 1 Hama cut. Here's my vote.
More Pat Olaf.
Interior issues. It could be a fill-in. It could be an 8-page backup. It could be a whole arc if the two awesome regular guys are having their own deadline troubles. That'd be great.
Yeah, I've actually asked Pat, and he's always been busy. So hopefully the next time I ask, he won't be.
Okay.
And in terms of your sort of role as the editor, how do you see that sort of fitting in overall? Is it a case of just matching Larry to the writer and sort of standing back and letting him do his thing, or is there a bit more of a guiding hand for the overall direction of, you know, where you're trying to go? And I'm thinking things like if you're putting out five arc trade paperbacks, is there kind of a thought as to how that all gels together, that sort of thing?
I definitely don't want to get involved in Larry telling his story. Larry's earned it. He's somebody that I think knows what he's doing. He doesn't need me to teach him or tell him how to write G.I. Joe. He has asked me on occasion for ideas, for things that, you know, he's like, what are you hearing? What are you hearing that you want? You know, like, what do you want? And so we've had maybe 2 emails about that kind of thing that he then takes and doesn't take. And that's perfectly fine with me. Yeah, my job is on this book, and I think as an editor, you take a different role on every project that you work on. You give what you need to give to make it the best it can be. My role is definitely kind of bringing some form to the madness to a certain degree, to saying, okay, yeah, we're doing 5-issue trades, so ideally we'd like to have the same artist in those 5 issues, you know, or try to make sure that, okay, knowing that we are going to have 5-issue trades, we need to have one great cover that we know is going to be the trade paperback cover, you know, that is like good for one issue, but also good for the entire 5 issues as a primer, right? Something that works for both. These are definitely the kinds of skills that I picked up at DC doing long-running series. But in other books, I definitely was more involved with the story, was more involved with approving the story, editing the story. In this, it's really just, hey, Larry, did you think about this? Hey, Larry, this part's a little confusing. Can we just clarify this? I'm very much just trying to give Larry the space to do what he wants to do, provide really great collaborators for him to work with, make sure that he has the opportunity to weigh in at all stages, really just try to make it as pleasant an environment as possible for Larry to continue writing this book, because like I said, we feel like we love Larry here, and we just want to make sure that he's feeling good and taken care of. So,
do you have a lot of interaction with Hasbro? Is it now that the machine is running and the train has left the station? I mean that in a positive way. I don't know if that analogy is a negative one, but is it more sort of the week in, week out of approvals, or is there still a lot of sort of creative and directional back and forth with Hasbro?
No, I think Hasbro also feels the same way that we do about Larry, in that I think they really trust him, and they know that he's been, you know, a huge force in G.I. Joe for a long time. So I don't get much pushback, if any, on story from Hasbro. I can't say that that's the same for Energon Universe, because that's not Larry, right? And that's more of an, you know, less established thing that they're trying to take some really bold creative swings with. So of course there's going to be more back and forth on that stuff. But with Hasbro, they've been extremely supportive on GI Joe, and specifically on Real American Hero. Like, I think they get what this is. They're happy that this book is doing better than it's done in a very long time, and like me, don't really want to get in Larry's way. Obviously, if ever I saw a problem, we would raise the flag and figure it out. But knock on wood, as of now, things are running. The train, so to speak, Tim, is running quite smoothly, and I'm really I'm happy to be aboard.
And speaking of Energon Universe, what sort of relationship do you have with your equivalent, I guess, Ben Abernathy, on the Energon Universe side? Are you talking regularly about seeing what one another is doing and that kind of thing?
Not so much. I love Ben. Ben's great. Ben actually hired me at DC, so he's wonderful, and I will. I'm a big Ben Abernathy guy. But I'd probably talk more to Sean Makowitz, who's kind of overseeing both, right? Because he's our publisher, so he sees what we're doing. He's involved with what's happening in the Energon universe. So there will be times when I will make a suggestion for something, and they'll be like, "Well, we're doing that in Energon universe," or something like that. So we just want to make sure that we're not occupying similar territory. But what's great for me is, as of yet, there's no Snake Eyes in the Energon universe, so I'm the only place that can
you
do
got the
Snake Eyes
monopoly
stuff, which is pretty sweet. And Andy Kubert is also very happy about that as well, because, as you can tell, he sure does like to draw Snake Eyes. So.
And you've got a big title there. You're editorial director at Skybound. So how much of your brain power and focus does GI Joe draw on versus all of the 101 other things that you've probably got going on within that role?
Yeah, I mean, I would say more than initially it was meant to. Because, I think we were excited to do Real American Hero, and we thought, we want to do this book, happy to do this book. I was personally excited to step into a book that had run for 300 issues and just be another name in the tapestry of people that have worked on this book. Like, that felt very familiar and cool and historic, and I liked that. There was something about just stepping into this long-running title that was very exciting. However, I would say at the beginning it was not, I won't say unimportant, but it was just like, okay, this is a book that we have modest expectations for, just because of how it had gone previously. And that very quickly changed once we launched, and we realized, oh my gosh, there's a way bigger audience for this book than we thought there was, than based on the data we had. And so the book itself obviously was one thing, and then the Real American Hero Kickstarter was the other big project that I worked on. That was obviously insane. So clearly there's a big audience for Real American Hero. I think there's some overlap with the Energon Universe audience, but I would also say there's plenty of people that are just Real American Hero people, and that's awesome. And I'm happy to be making comics that hopefully they enjoy.
Alex, there are so many G.I. Joe comics, some written by Larry Hama and some not, that have never been reprinted, like European Missions or Action Force or the Hasbro produced comics that came with action figures in the 2000 teens. Is Skybound interested in reprinting those?
I can neither confirm nor deny anything about any other reprints at this time. But thank you. Good question.
There was a certain editor who wrote in the back of the letters page that there was, I don't know the exact quote, but said something like, "We would like to be able to reprint everything at some point." So I'll just leave that out there. But
yeah, time, resources, all important factors.
And is the drumbeat for the soft cover compendiums, I think it was said that that they would follow following the Kickstarter and the hardcovers. It looks like there's been going to be about a year gap between volume 1, volume 2. Is that the kind of cadence that we'd expect to see for the soft covers?
I'm pretty sure we're going faster than that. I think it's like 2 a year. So volume 1 came out last year. right? And I think 2 and 3 are this year, and then 4 is probably early next year. So it's maybe every 6 months.
I just have to put my Transformers hat on for a question and talk to the wrong editor. Is there any way that the 4-issue G.I. Joe and Transformers miniseries can get moved into the first Transformers compendium, because it actually takes place like between issues, like around 26? Bumblebee gets turned into Goldbug, and Shockwave even refers to Cobra in a regular issue Transformers. Okay, I'm done.
Stay tuned for more. Actually, we've already announced it. We are doing Transformers Compendium Kickstarter, and that's happening in April.
That's very exciting. And the newsprint, or is it technically newsprint, or is it sort of a faux newsprint?
We call it newsprint.
Okay,
I don't know. It sure feels like newsprint.
I mean, because I heard several years ago that the cost of newsprint had gotten higher than coated stock, than glossy paper, which is why
I had heard that as well. However, I think that's no longer the case, at least not with this stuff, because, and it could be because literally we were ordering so much of it that they were like, okay, we can bring the cost of this down. Because I know, there's been a number of Image books that now have printed on newsprint.
There was that Walking Dead deluxe reprints, newsprint edition. That was really fun.
Right. Yeah. No, Robert is all about that newsprint, and is like, I wish I could print every book that I do on it. So I don't know, something about it.
We've had an announcement of a Cold Slither comic book to come. Is that falling under your umbrella of control?
Nope. That's a Ben Abernathy joint. So yeah, I can't really speak much to it other than I've seen some stuff from it and it looks cool.
Let's talk about silent missions as well before we run out of time. So we've got 6 issues coming out, basically one a week, with the reprint of issue 21 also hitting in the first week. Can you talk about the genesis of this project?
Yes, I would love to. So we were talking about just reprinting the silent issue. And I was like, yeah, we should do that. That sounds like a good idea. And there were some ideas thrown around, which I won't share because they're truly awful, about what to do with the silent issue that could be fun. And none of those ideas worked. And then I think I, at the same time, had been pitched a silent series for a completely different thing, like an original comic. And I always lament that, because I'm like, I think this is a great gimmick that like many artists love to do. They love to tell silent stories, but it doesn't really work for an entire series. It can, but it's rare. But everybody wants to do a silent issue. Everybody. So many artists, specifically writer artists, love the idea of telling a story without words. And I think that, I'm sure there's a lot of them that were very, very inspired by the original silent issue. So then I don't know, I pitched it. I said, look, what if we did something where we just take a bunch of different G.I. Joe characters and tell silent stories with them. We do one-off stories where that feels like it. You learn a little bit of something about who that character is, what they're all about, and you give a great storyteller a chance to flex and show off what they can do. And they were like, yeah, that sounds good to me. And then I had the really dumb idea of saying, well, what if we did it in like a 5-week month when we just back to back weekly G.I. Joe comics, weekly silent issues. You can reprint the silent issue in the same month. And there's got to be some month coming up where there's 5 Wednesdays. Like, let's do that. That'd be crazy. That'd be so much fun. And that got approved. And then I was like, oh no, this is so many comics. And what ended up happening, and we had these kind of like skip months kind of built in anyway into G.I. Joe, just to let Larry, make sure that Larry can keep up and make sure that we can, keep things at a high level of quality. So it felt like, okay, let's instead of publishing a regular issue of Real American Hero, let's do it on one of those skip months. It's a skip month for everybody but me. And that's how we came up with silent missions. And I was excited. The thing that brings me the most joy is just in this job is working with really talented people. I don't have like a dream project. I don't have, I don't know. I think it's really, the joy is just watching and helping really nice and talented people create amazing stuff. And I got to do that on this fivefold, and it was really, really exciting. And so, yeah, I just reached out to some of my favorite writer artists. The only one that was like, I might need some help is Danny. But that way we brought in Dan Waters, who'd obviously written Destro, and I love Dan's work. I'd worked with him on Creature from the Black Lagoon, right there.
Yeah.
And I'd worked with him at DC, so he helped out a little bit. But I really wanted the artist to be the star of this miniseries or this event or whatever you want to call it. And so somebody like Phil, somebody like Wes Craig, these are guys that I know have been doing it and have done it and can do it and would do a great job. Andrew, I just worked with on through 14. So I was like, you want to do another one? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And then, Leo Romero, I was actually not sure if he was into writing or not, but I was like, you're one of my favorite people, and I know you're a great storyteller, so can you do it? And he was like, absolutely. And then he did an incredible Spirit story. So,
Alex, you picked the 5 characters?
It may be different in every case. I think with Roadblock, I said, Andrew, you draw really big guys. Do you want to draw a really big guy? Yeah, there you go. Exactly. He can do it. He probably had to subdue his instincts a bit for Roadblock, which is saying something. Wes Craig picked Duke. I wouldn't have suggested Duke, only because we'd done a Duke miniseries already, but in Andrew John Universe. But he was like, no, Duke's my guy. And I was like, okay, no problem. You got it. With Jinx would be amazing. And I suggested to Jinx, to Danny, just because I was like, you would just crush this. Like, I just could see it in my head of like, you want to do ninja stuff. You can't do Snake Eyes. We purposely didn't want to do Snake Eyes because obviously that had been done quite well. So let's stay away there. But yeah, so Jinx, Jinx would be amazing. And I was like, have you ever wanted to know what Frank Miller looked like drawing Jinx? Well, this is kind of that. Like, she's got her own style, but I would say it's certainly Miller-esque at times. So that's where that came from. And yeah, I want to say Leo picked Spirit. I don't think I necessarily picked. I think I probably threw out. You know what I did? I went through our G.I. Joe Kickstarter cards and it went through specifically like characters that had like high vote totals, and I think that's where Beachhead came from, because Beachhead was the number one voted G.I. Joe character, and so I think I pitched that to Phil, and Phil ran with it. So
I'll phrase this not as a question but as a statement. I hope when there's a collection of these 5 wordless issues, there's a volume 1 on the spine, and that in 2026 I can look forward to another 5-week G.I. Joe event taking the place of a regular issue.
That seems like a great idea.
Cool. Cool.
That's all I can say. But yes. And we do, Andy did the cover for the collection, which is great. Mm-hmm. He drew, I think it's also the variant cover for the silent issue reprint. Yeah. So, that'll be the cover for the collection. Pretty excited about that. I thought he did a spectacular job. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if we've said this, but I'll say it now. This trade paperback will be printed on on your favorite newsprint.
Nice.
So it's gonna have a slightly different look and feel. I mean, the silent issue reprint was on the same newsprint, but we decided to print the other stories on regular modern paper. But it looks good both ways, so we're gonna go for it.
Mark, you want to ask about variant covers, or did you have something else we didn't get to?
I was just gonna sort of leave room for a question in a statement, which was that one of the things that we were looking at this Silent Missions month, a thought occurred to us, is doing it all in 1 month means that then you go back to 1 issue of ARAH per month, which means that if you want to do more than one. You've got, you're not asking people to buy too many books in a month. So is there space for more ARAH than just one issue a month?
Is there space? I mean, yeah, there's space, but I think that our goal is to make every issue feel special. Our goal is to not overdo it. I think that's one of the keys to Skybound's success as a whole, is to really value quality over quantity. And I would never want to do anything on this or any other title to jeopardize the quality. But, with silent missions, I think we've seen that there is an appetite for more, and we definitely want to do more. We just want to do it right. So stay tuned for more, but don't expect, I'll manage your expectations in that, like, don't expect Real American Hero to go twice a month, because that's not going to happen, because Larry would never be able to keep up with that. And frankly, no artist would be able to keep up with that either. I'm not sure I could find enough great artists to throw at this book to do a twice a month book, but we want to be consistent. We're going to try to limit those skip months in the future. We actually have no skip months planned for the rest of the year.
Yes.
So that's something. We're doing our best. And we my personal goal is for there actually to just never be another skip month, but we'll see. I can't fully commit to it, but that's my goal.
I've been struck by all the mentions in Energon Universe letters pages of, we're really just keeping it to these 3 books. And part of me thinks, no, that's not enough. But I can think of franchises, really well-known franchises and IPs at other publishers where there's a whole family of books. There might be, 6 books out of an editorial office or more, and like 2 of them are must read and 3 of them are good and the rest are pretty good. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed by that. It gets expensive. And then I do start to sort of grumble about the 2 that aren't as good as the 2 best ones. And I think, as nice as it would be to have, 10 Void Rivals, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Real American Hero books every month, your comment about quality does make sense.
Well, I think you never want to make readers have to pick. The comics are expensive now, right? So, like, if you were to have 6 G.I. Joe books, there's going to be people that are not going to be able to read all 6 G.I. Joe books. So they're going to pick the Snake Eyes book, and they're going to pick, the main G.I. Joe book, but they're not going to pick up whatever other thing we have, right? So I think it's really about making it obvious and easy for readers to know where to start and where to continue and how to continue. That goes to, like, trade paperbacks, that goes to collections. Like, we don't want it to be complicated. I think say what you want about Marvel or DC, but it's hard to know where to start with those books sometimes, and that's I don't think that's a good thing. I think it's nice that with Real American Hero, like, if you just, special missions aside, like, if you wanted to just read through issues 1 to 315, which is what's been published so far, you could do that, and it's a cohesive story. And there I would say, again, some crossovers with special missions, but pretty minimal, right? Like, it's pretty much just so you could go, from start to finish. And obviously, with something like Walking Dead or something like Invincible, that's been the model, and that's worked really, really well for us. So we never want it to be confusing. And that's definitely something that goes back to Robert. And I think I had my some of my DC learnings beaten out of me over the last 5 years.
It's just start over at new number 1 next month, and then next year.
Right. It's diminishing returns, and I think it's actually unnecessary. I think there's plenty of. I mean, look, they just did it with Batman, right? Where they're publishing this new Hush story in the main title of Batman, and that stuff is selling great. So I don't see any reason why you would need to restart it. You just need to get interest, and there's other ways to get interest than just going with a new number 1. And then it hurts you in the long run, in my opinion. So,
last question, quick yes or no to encourage our listeners and viewers to write letters to Postbox the Pit. Do you read every email that comes into ARAH@skybound.com?
I'm glad we're talking about the letters column. Yes, I read every single one. I answer every single one. Well, almost every single one. There's a few that I go, I'm not going to print that. But so I do have some discretion. But for the most part, I try to print every single one. And that is why some of those emails at this point are quite old, because I have a lot to get through. And I really try to make sure that if someone has written in and they've written in a thoughtful letter, that it makes it into the letters column, because I think it's really cool to see your name in print, especially as a fan, right? And I don't want anyone to get lost if they don't have to get lost. But I do read everything, and I suspect over time the letters column will catch up a little bit more closely to where we're actually at in the story, because I just think it's inevitable that I will get less letters. I got so many letters at the beginning; it was crazy. And I definitely I'll read everything. If you're someone that sends in a letter every single month, sometimes I'll be like, this guy, yep, there you go. I don't know that I can print every single letter that you send in. I'd rather print a letter that somebody has never written in before, or I have like one email from them. I'll print that letter. But largely, I'm coming at it from a place of I want everybody's letters to get into the letters column, because that's fun, and I would appreciate that as a fan. And then, I try to answer it as well as I can. But oftentimes it's just like, thank you. Good suggestion. Love to hear it. Also, I try to proofread them. I've heard some comments about how well or how badly I proofread letters. I try to proofread them, but it's not really my job to go in and fix every letter. I think it's the letter writer's job to make sure that their letter is already proofread by the time it comes to me.
I own my mistakes. I do.
But it's okay.
I can hold up my hand to that.
No one, nobody cares. It's okay. Like, just as long as the intent is in there, I will answer. I'm sure I will have typos in my responses too. Sometimes it happens, but no, it's really more about just talking to the community building, letting everybody see what everybody else is saying. I do publish the good ones and the bad ones. Like, once in a while there'll be a negative one, and I try to get it in there because I think it's anyone's opinion is as valid as anybody else's. So, but it's been nice that by and large it's been mostly just praise and then where's this character, which mostly I'm like, well, I don't know. That's a good question. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they are actually coming up in 2 issues. So keep an eye out for Storm Shadow or whatever. So, yeah. But I do enjoy doing the letters column, and I've seen both of you. I think both of you guys have written in. So it's been nice to communicate via letters, and also nice to now communicate via this podcast. And I'll say this, I've listened to 2 episodes of this podcast, and I don't think, especially Tim, I want to say I've never seen somebody get so granular as Tim has with like the way shots are composed or the way colors are done or anything. Like, it's clearly you guys really care, and that's evident that I think you guys really love G.I. Joe, and you really want this book to be as amazing as possible, and you want to shout it from the rooftops when it's great and question it when it's not. And I totally appreciate all of that. So I just want to say, I think you guys are doing a really good job with this podcast. And the fact that you get so granular, I think is just a testament to how much you care. And I think that's cool. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you.
Also, it's testament to think, the hard work that the team puts into it, that if it wasn't something that of that standard, it couldn't make us as excited to be doing this each month, as the issues come out.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate it, and getting to know the G.I. Joe fan base as a non-G.I. Joe fan over the past 2 years, I guess at this point, I've found G.I. Joe fans have been nothing but welcoming and very nice, and also, yeah, they just love G.I. Joe. And it's been fun to get up to speed on such a cool series and a cool franchise, and also I think hopefully bring something to the table as somebody that hasn't had the exposure to it. I'm not bogged down by 30 years of fandom. I can hopefully come in with a fresh idea every now and then from that perspective, and I'll do my best.
And speaking of fandom as well, we've said this before, but bears repeating that it would be good to get some of you guys from Skybound to one of the cons like Joe Fest to have that, big comic presence there, because I think the comics is just as important, if not more important, as those toys.
We'd love to. I think our convention schedules are quite limited right now, but I think Makowitz went to Transformers Con recently, unofficially. I think, I'd love to get out to more for sure. It's just expensive to go and set up at those places sometimes, and we don't have necessarily the manpower to do it. We're a scrappy operation at times on the comic side.
If the reason is like I can't take 4 days off because I got to put 2 issues of G.I. Joe to bed, we hear you and understand.
Okay.
Because I'd rather no skip month, but maybe you skip a convention if that's the trade off. But I second that from Mark. There are a couple of G.I. Joe conventions with a passionate and invested attendance, and we last year both Mark and I thought, this would really be like a moment for Skybound, even in a small. There doesn't need to be a pavilion.
Sure.
But this would be a really good fit for some outreach, and it feels like a good opportunity.
Well, and I'd be remiss without doing this podcast and not mentioning Diana Davis, who's like my best friend now, who is our creative consultant and like the true, voice of the fans, I think, when it comes to this stuff. And she's both fan and professional. I should say that too. She knows she's ultimately doing a job, and she knows the line. But she has mentioned these, JoeCon and stuff like that to us before, and is always an advocate for us to try to go to stuff like that. So we'll work on it. But shout out to Diana, because she'll probably listen to this, and I just want her to know that I appreciate her.
Every continuity glitch or character costume that she can smooth out in the process, we preemptively, it's one less thing that we feel obligated to zoom in and spend 5 minutes on. This guy's glove is blue. Why?
Perfect. So thank you, Alex, for spending the time with us. Really good to finally chat with you. Is there anything that you would like to point people at before you despair?
Yes. Transformers Kickstarter is going to launch in 11 days. I don't know when this is going to come out, but it launches April 8th, which is I think is that the first day, or it's the second week of the silent missions. So there we go. If people are keeping track, it's going to include some G.I. Joe stuff in it. Whenever the G.I. Joes cross over with Transformers, they're over there. Very, very excited to be launching that. Also a new Transformers fan. It's been fun to get to know that side of things as well. But that's, huge project that I just wanted to mention. But no, I obviously read all the silent missions because I think they're great. And let me know what you think in the letters. Let me know what characters you'd like to see if ever there was a second series. I'd be curious to find out. And I love hearing from everybody that's reading the book. So yeah, please feel free to send in letters. And like I said, I promise I will try to get to it eventually. If I get too many letters, if you don't see your letter in the immediate next issue, don't worry. It's coming eventually.
that issue, that 101 letter will eventually see print in
I think I'm
issue 350 once you get through them.
5 issues behind, maybe 4 issues behind. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us. We're glad we finally nabbed you for an episode. We enjoy seeing your name on this book every month because it means it is a mark of quality. Good luck with your limited convention season this summer, and we look forward to more great things from A Real American Hero.
Thank you. Yeah, and keep up the good work, guys. You're doing God's work. You're doing God's work.
Well, that was great. Good job, Mark, getting Alex Antone. I'm going to say it correctly. Finally for the show. That's been someone we've been after for more than a year.
Perfect. So I think we are done talking with Alex, and because he's not here anymore, is he? So if you enjoyed hearing from us and want to see more, you can find us over at talkingjoe.co.uk. That is our website where we are located with links to all of the places. Facebook, so we've got a Facebook group where you can join in the discussion, see the latest news. We're on X, Instagram, we're on Patreon. So links there to the Patreon too, patreon.com/talkingjoe. Big thanks to Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane version 2. This one's got a leather jacket with a kind of like a fur collar, and Infinite Entertainment. Tim, where can you be found when you're not talking to me about G.I. Joe?
My creative partners, Nick Nadell and Kevin Marr, and I have a YouTube channel that's at Atomic Abe, which posts carefully researched video essays ranging from 5 to 75 minutes in length on TV and film. I own a brick and mortar comic book store right outside Boston. That's Hub Comics. And I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. So before we go, as always, Tim, can you remind us about something?
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters!
Ba-na-na-na-na-na-na.